There are two kinds of people in this world. People who like the Beatles, and people who are idiots. I fall into the former category. Original pressing bitches.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand.
My mom introduced me to the Beatles when I was about 5 or 6, and they were the first band I ever really liked. She played me songs like Hey Bulldog and Yellow Submarine and Octopus's Garden, more kid-friendly stuff, and as I got older I got into some more heavy stuff like A Day in the Life and While My Guitar Gently Weeps. What I find kind of weird is that as big as a Beatles fan as I am, I only ever saw 2 Beatles movies. The first one I ever saw was the animated one, Yellow Submarine, which is still one of my favorite movies of all time, even though it's weird as fuck. The second one I ever saw didn't actually have any direct relation from the Beatles. They didn't write any songs, they didn't act, they didn't write, and that movie is Across the Universe. Across the Universe is what I like to call a band-centric musical. That being, every song in the movie is written by one specific band. In this case happens to be the Beatles. And the world is based in the universe the Beatles created with their music. The characters named after Beatles songs, there's lots of references. The main character's from Liverpool. We can see that coming. It captures a lot of what the Beatles wanted to say. Love, peace, heartbreak, and lots of drugs.
Well, you may be a lover, but you ain't no damn star. Look out!
The story of the movie follows a young man named Jude as he leaves England to try and find his father in the States. And while he thought his dad was a professor at a prestigious university, turns out he's just a janitor working there, and he never even knew he was born. While Jude's at the university, he comes across some guy named Max, and they become best friends.
As a stranger to our shores, the least I can do is offer you some Ivy League hospitality.
He's sick of school and all the crap he gets from his parents about what he's going to do with his life. So what does he decide to do? Head out to New York with some dude he just met from Liverpool.
What are you gonna do if you don't go back to college? What any irresponsible, unmotivated dropout would do? Go to New York, like tonight.
Eventually, Max's sister Lucy comes and joins them in New York. And Jude and Lucy get a bit of a thing going.
I can't forget the time or place where we just...
In case you couldn't tell, pretty much everyone in this movie is named after a Beatles character. Jude, Max, Lucy, Sadie, Dr. Robert, Jojo, Prudence, Mr. Kite. But it's a movie about the Beatles, you kind of expect it, don't you? The story's nothing new. It's been told 100 times, and it's pretty much used just to get along from song to song. And speaking of songs, we can't talk about a Beatles musical without mentioning the Beatles music.
I am he as you are, he as you are me, and we are all together.
The songs are definitely the highlight of the movie. Everyone's a great singer, and there's some really creative ways of using the Beatles songs in ways they weren't intended to be. Like the song I Want You isn't so much about wanting a girl as it is Uncle Sam wanting you to join the army. I think that's really clever.
I want you. I want you so bad.
And I Want to Hold Your Hand isn't about a boy wanting a girl, it's about a girl wanting a girl.
And please say to me, you'll let me hold your hand.
Nice. There's so many different great versions of classic Beatles songs. Some of them stick more traditional, which is kind of a rock thing going. Some of them get really out there. Some of them are just kind of weird. Like with A Little Help From My Friends, sounds like it's being played by a bunch of drunk college students, because during the scene, that's what's going on. It's Max, Jude, and these guys getting drunk and having a night out on the town. And the guitar is played all sloppily, but it's good intentions. It fits the movie much better than it does just listening to it. And partway through the movie, there's a bit with Mr. Kite, played by Eddie Izzard, where he doesn't so much sing the song as he does tell the people that he's Mr. Kite and he's putting on this grand show.
The celebrated Mr. K performs his feat on Saturday at Bishopsgate. Nice neck of the woods!
There's a couple other pretty good cameos in this movie too. Bono shows up as Dr. Robert and sings I'm the Walrus. And Joe Cocker introduces us to the character of Jojo by singing an amazingly good cover of Come Together. is probably my favorite song in the whole movie.
Got to be a joker, he just do what he please.
Where I think the movie falls a bit flat is when it tries to give every character their own individual conflict and story. While the main focus is on Jude and Lucy and their relationship with each other and what's going on with war and protests and Max being drafted, we also deal with a lot of other side characters' conflicts which don't really amount to much. While Max gets drafted, you don't see much of him until after he gets back. You don't get to see him too much in the war zone. And Sadie has her own band, which JoJo joins on guitar, and they have a bit of a relationship going on there. And Sadie's been offered to join this label, but the manager wants it to be her with a new band, and she doesn't like that, and JoJo pisses her off, and it kind of just resolves itself by the end of the movie, you know, happy ending, all that. Prudence really doesn't seem to have any purpose in this movie. I mean, yeah, she's not a bad character, she's just, you could just cut out everything involving Prudence, and nothing would change. You just have like 2 less musical numbers and that's it. Basically, Prudence is a lesbian, but she's really concerned. She doesn't like expressing herself. I don't think anyone knows she's a lesbian. And you know, that could be interesting, but they really don't do anything with it. And halfway through the movie, she just disappears. And then suddenly reappears being part of Mr. Kite's circus. And she just comes back in to the group and I don't get it. Maybe it's just so they can sing Dear Prudence. It's a good song. Lucy really isn't that interesting either. She has a boyfriend at the beginning of the movie who dies in the war, which is why she's big on protesting the war. But then she pretty much just hooked up with Jude after knowing him for a couple of days, which I guess Max did as well. I think my favorite character in the movie is Max, though. He just seems to be pretty relatable. Like, he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. And he's just gonna do different things until he finds what he wants. And then he gets interrupted by the man, and he's gotta go fight and kill people, which I don't think anyone likes doing.
Ah, you missed! You missed!
It was the wind.
All right, set me up.
It's all right, I believe in you.
You couldn't hit the barn side of a broad, man. Come on.
The visuals in the movie range from good to weird to not so good. The costumes and stuff, especially when they get to the weirder stuff like Mr. Kite and Dr. Robert, are really good. The movie is actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Costume Design. But once they start getting really out there with CGI effects and green screen stuff, the quality just goes down and it just looks so fake. It looks like something from like a cutscene in a PS2 game. With the really weird, surreal stuff, it doesn't affect it too much. I think one of the biggest flaws in the movie is it just stops dead halfway through. I mean, you got a pretty good plot going, you know, Jude and Max meet up, go to New York, they meet all these guys, Max getting drafted, oh god, what's going on? Oh, we're going to, Sadie, she's getting a big thing, let's go, we're going to the party. Here's Dr. Robert. We do drugs for about 15 minutes. And it just stops dead. I mean, yeah, you get some good music. I mean, that's where I'm the Walrus is, and Because, and Mr. Kite. But it just stops dead. Nothing really happens. They get on Dr. Robert's bus. They drive 3,000 miles to meet some doctor we've never heard of. And Dr. Robert just said, like, oh, we're going back to California, but we live in New York. Well, fuck you. We're going to California. You can stay here. And they stay there, and then they just go through a field, and then suddenly there's a circus, and Eddie Izzard's there in a fat suit, and Prudence is there as Henry the Horse, and she's riding a horse that does like roller skating, and Eddie Izzard goes like kind of small and goes on a flaming plane and goes in the sky, and then Prudence meets this girl named Rita, and that's all we get because we needed another reference to a Beatles song. It's a good song. I like Lovely Rita, and then they just lay down in a field and sing Because, and then they swim in the ocean, not an ocean, a lake, and then the helicopters come over and we're back in New York. It really doesn't have the best pacing. Just drugs, field, everyone's laying in a circle like they just finished with an orgy, and a helicopter flies over and they're back in New York, and Lucy's gotten really involved with the revolution, and she and Jude are living together. Max is overseas in Vietnam. Sadie and JoJo are JoJo's pissed at Sadie, and Sadie's pissed at JoJo. Prudence just disappears until like the last scene of the movie at this point. The first half of the movie is really good. I definitely think the first half is the best point. Like, I say up to, and maybe even the first bit of Dr. Robert, like when they're just doing I'm the Walrus and all the trippy visuals where they're driving in their bus. And then it just stops. It's not that I got bored or anything with it, because that's the weirdest freaking part of the movie, is there's all these puppets and Mr. Kite singing and drugs, basically. And I wasn't bored, but I was really confused. Like, why? Did you just want to do these songs? Did you need to pad out your runtime or something? Because that seems like a really expensive way to do it. And I think they could have done something there. I mean, maybe show us more of Jude and Lucy getting into a relationship and getting their own place. Show Max, like, in Vietnam a bit more. Like, maybe him training and flying over. I mean, you could still put some Beatles songs in there, like maybe Lucy and Max are getting, like, they have a crappy home and they're fixing it up. And while they do that, they have a montage and they sing Fixing a Hole. I mean, come on, that'd work. But instead we get Eddie Izzard doing Mr. Kite, which isn't bad. Eddie Izzard's great. It's just a weird-ass scene. I think the only reason I like it is because Eddie Izzard's there. And he's my all-time favorite comedian, but that whole scene's just weird. I mean, there had been some, like, suspension of disbelief stuff before. Like, in Come Together, JoJo's walking through New York, and all these people start, basically, like, all these businessmen are, like, walking single file, and, like, they start doing these really mechanical movements, and it's really cool. There's a scene in a bowling alley where, skipping down the bowling lanes and, like, rolling down the aisles. And it definitely has its surreal moments before then, but it just comes out of nowhere. That's probably my biggest complaint with the movie, is that bit in the middle. Maybe not that bit so much itself, but how it goes from that bit to New York, and, like, I don't know how much time passed. I don't know how they got back to New York. I don't know if the helicopter was there symbolizing someone picking them up and flying them back. I don't know if it's just, here's reality coming over you in the form of a helicopter. You gotta go to Vietnam. You gotta get a job. Revolution in the air. Yep, yeah, they sing Revolution, of course. I don't know. It's just kind of meanders about for a bit and then suddenly seems to pick up on a separate story. Like they had two ideas for a story. One where a guy from England meets this guy and they move to New York, and just their kind of story. And another story where there's a revolution going on and there's just so much pressure with that. The revolution, the protesters are getting more and more violent. The military's getting involved. The riots in Detroit are mentioned. It's a really kind of depressing scene, and with a really good version of Let It Be being sung. They seem to be two separate stories that just kind of got mashed together with LSD, basically. That's the big flaw of the movie. I know I'm just kind of repeating myself, but it is. I'm gonna go back to talking about the good stuff. The soundtrack is really good. Most of it is. There's a few flops, but like I said, everything's good, and they got the big hits: Let It Be, I'm the Walrus, Hey Jude, Helter Skelter, Across the Universe, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, All I Need Is Love. They got smaller ones like Girl, Hold Me Tight. Like, they don't have every huge Beatles song in there. They don't have Here Comes the Sun or Sgt. Pepper or When I'm 64 or stuff like that. Or Yellow Submarine or anything, but they got a good mix of the really popular stuff, the huge ones everyone knows, and the stuff that not everyone knows. I mean, there's quite a few songs on here I didn't know, and I consider myself to be a really big Beatles fan.
So that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, well, speaking as a brother, I think she could do better.
A couple of fun nuggets of info for you. The movie was nominated for a Golden Globe and an Academy Award. It didn't win either, but, you know, that's pretty good. There's a total of 34 Beatles songs in the movie. Also, they never actually mention the word Beatles anywhere in the movie. Not even the credits. at the end of the credits it just says songs written by John, Paul, George, and Ringo, aka the Fab Four. And I think that's probably just to do with budgeting, because, you know, if you want to say the word the Beatles, you're going to get charged about $4 million just for saying that. $2 million per syllable, you know. The movie didn't make its money back, which I can find a bit depressing sometimes. It was $45 million to make, and they only made $29 million back. I don't want. It's just one of those things that makes me kind of sad when I see a good movie and it didn't make its money back. It was the same thing with Dread. But if it's a bad movie doesn't make its money back, well, then I just giggle to myself.
We're gonna get you, asshole! How do you like me? Go on, man! You ain't got nothing.
Yeah, then go back into that.
They're not going back to that. No, they're not.
So, who would like this movie? Well, definitely Beatles fans, I think, will like it. Even if they don't like the characters or plot or anything really in that much, they'll like the references and they'll probably like hearing different versions of the songs and someone else's take on them. I did. That's why I watched it. Musical fans will probably get a good bit of enjoyment out of it. The music's really good, so you're not going to get shitty sound quality or anything. It all sounds really good, really good production values. I guess if you like romance movies, this might be your thing. It's a very stereotypical, easy to guess what's going to happen next romance. So, or if you just want to watch a movie with some weird crap in it, give it a look. But if you want to watch a weird Beatles movie, I definitely suggest Yellow Submarine over this. So overall, not bad. It's alright. It's not horrible. It's not great. If you just want to listen to the Beatles, you know, go listen to the Beatles. If you want to hear someone else's interpretation of what the Beatles are and what their music represents and says and tells a story about, it's worth a watch. If you don't like the Beatles, this probably isn't going to sway you. And if you've never heard the Beatles, A, how? And 2, go listen to the Beatles first. I mean, don't listen to someone covering the Beatles. Well, I hope you enjoyed the view. Now, if you excuse me, I gotta go listen to my jams. If you're more flat, slowly down.
All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need. Love is all you need.
He just shows up, he invites him over to Thanksgiving dinner, and then it's like, hey, let's go to New York, buddy. Okay. Is that a British accent or what? I'm British, I can't do a British accent.